KR's daily programming do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, sensationalism, what it is and why it is dangerous. Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon and welcome to the Prudent Money Radio Show. I'm your host, Bob Brooks. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, if you got a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Send a question into the Ask Bob section, and we'll get that taken care of. I say it just about every time. I love getting your questions, and I love hearing your comments. And the number one thing for me is to be a resource for you. And there's a lot of ways I can do that. So feel free to always reach out because I do read those questions and I do answer those questions. And if you've ever sent in a question and did not receive an answer, well, resend it or give us a call or something and reach out to us because I want to make sure that we do get you an answer. And it is very, very important to me. We've been doing this now for over 20 years, the radio show, and the questions from you have always been so very important to me. So it also tells me what you're thinking, what's going on, maybe something I should talk about on the radio. I get blessed by it. And so any questions or comments, prudentmoney.com. One of the things I started doing about 2 or 3 weeks ago is when I would prep a show and I didn't necessarily know exactly what I wanted to talk about, I like to think of conversations that I've had, things that have been talked about, articles I'm reading, and I'm just coming up with observations, a series of observations that I jot down and say, yeah, I need to talk about this. Because I've always seen it this way. I feel like that God has blessed me with a seat on the front row, and I get to watch things take place and observe through conversations that I have, through resources that I have, resources that are not mainstream. So someone the other day asked me, who do you listen to? Who do you get information from? And most of them are definitely not mainstream. I try to find some resources that are not over sensationalized. We'll talk about that. A little bit more rational and draws from data and of course and I trust their speculation. So a lot of information floating around out there and you got to be careful with it. So back to the observations. So I've been talking about just various observations that I've had over the past week and talking to people and want to visit with you about it because I think that you can benefit from it. And one of the things I've noticed is that people are just, and I only see this because people want to talk about money and finances and investments when I visit with them. People are just stressed out right now. And I think that we don't, and also in addition to that, time just seems to be flying by. I mean, I could not believe yesterday I was doing something and I looked down and it was October 19th. Now, this has been an extremely busy month with work, but outside of work. My son's a senior, and my youngest son's a senior in high school, and he plays football, and there's been out-of-town games. I mean, not just out-of-town games, Austin out-of-town games. Whoever put that schedule together. Back-to-back weeks. So for those of you who live in the great city of Dallas, you know what that drive is like to Austin. And it's been an extremely busy week. But I just, as time flies by and we deal, probably not paying as much attention to it, but we deal with these high prices. We've dealt with it. We're going to continue to deal with it. and just creates a lot of financial stress. Not to mention what's going on with the stock market. I can't think of a worse time to start a bear market than January 1st. And that's when this bear market top, that's when this bull market hit a top, which just simply means did not go any further, did not go up any further, and started going down. January 1st. So whatever the decline produces between now and the end of the year, which is really less than 2.5 months away. Can you believe that? That total return, assuming it's negative, in a worst case scenario, could be a really bad return printed for an entire year, because they only print what happened in 2021 or 2020 or 2022. So a lot of stress, and I think a lot of the stress that financial stress comes from is this whole idea of sensationalism. And it's going on around us at all times. The good news about a 24-hour media cycle is that at any time during the day or the night, you're one keystroke away from pulling up any information that you need. I mean, I'm not telling you something you don't know, but just think about it for a second. We're just so used to it. But there's so much content, and depending on what sites you go to, so much political content and badgering and negative content and inflation content and stock market. You get just beat down. And what you've got to realize is, that it's happening. I mean, I don't know about you, but my email inbox, just work related, not what comes in from listeners in the radio show, is just maxed out with so much that I just end up deleting. And I put do not subscribe, and it just doesn't seem like that works. You delete one, five different ones come up or something like that. But this whole idea of sensationalism is that at the end of the day, your opinion shows like on Fox at Night and your articles on various publications and websites is all about content, creation of content. They're content creators, and creates a massive competition for eyeballs. In other words, people looking at it and reading it, and likes. So as a result, you pretty much end up with three types of content. First, you come up with well-researched opinion, facts-based stories. You don't over-sensationalize them, you just tell the story as it is. And you keep a lot of your opinions not too biased, more kind of in the middle. Not a whole lot of that going on. But and that's what I look for. Yes, I love to hear people's opinions. At the same time, there's one analyst that I follow that just every headline, I'm going to read his analysis, whether he has a sensationalized headline or not. But every single headline, the world's coming to an end. So first, there's these well-researched opinion facts-based stories. Then second, there's the opposite of good, solid information. These stories get the facts wrong, basically written to mislead, to create an optic, and basically stories that are full of lies, things that are just blatantly not true. But the problem today is that the over-sensationalized information is so believable. That's the problem. But when you read an over-sensationalized piece of information, it's important to ask one question. What are the odds of it happening? Because I could get on here and I could talk about worst case scenarios, but then if I had to be transparent about what I was talking about, what was over sensationalized. Like, let me talk about how I see the dollar crashing, losing all of its value, or what I see is happening to create hyperinflation, where a loaf of bread is going to cost $20 a loaf. This kind of thing, over sensationalizing, getting your attention. You got to ask the question, what are the odds of it happening? Well, if I had to say if I had to look at all the things that could happen to our economy, and all I had to do was categorize them by the probability of it happening, I would say hyperinflation, about a 15% chance. I just don't think it hyperinflation. That's where inflation gets just completely spirals out of control. Turkey, I believe, is at 83% inflation. Compared to us, we're at about 8 point something percent. Get that, 83%. And hyperinflation, about 15% chance. And of course, there's people who talk about hyperinflation and it's going to happen and all this type of thing. You got to remember it's an opinion and it's over sensationalized. There's some sensationalism that goes along with it. Let me get back to that because I do have a break coming up. This is Bob Brooks. If you got a question for me, go to the website, send it in. I'll get it answered for you because we are up against a break. Stick around. I'll be right back. Hi, this is Bob Brooks, host of the Prudent Money Radio Show. Well, 2022 has been a miserable year for investing. Will 2023 bring the same? Times like this have a way of making us feel stuck, not knowing what to do. Well, there are two keys to success in any kind of market. First, you have to be informed, but second, you have to receive that information in a way that anyone can understand it. This is my objective with the next Prudent Money webinar. There are 5 main questions that you should be asking right now. Number 1, what is a bear market and what does a bear market really look like? This could tell us a whole lot about 2023. Number 2, why is it important to understand cycles when it comes to growing my retirement? Number 3, what do I need to know about inflation? How high will these prices go? How do I protect myself from inflation? Number 4, why should I be careful with bonds? Number 5, what steps do I take now? What are my options? Well, if you're unsure about the future, then this webinar is for you. Sign up now for the 5 questions that could save your retirement. There's 2 times we're going to present this webinar. The first one is on Wednesday, October 26th at noon, and the second one is Friday, October the 28th at noon as well. Today, sign up at prudentmoney.com.
Do you have to be baptized to be saved? Does baptism save you? Well, these questions plague Christians and non-Christians alike and often divide us along doctrinal lines. Exactly what happens when we are baptized? Do you have to be baptized? And if not, why do it? Get the answers straight from the Bible as we Ask Pastor Mike, Friday on Focal Point.
8:30 a.m. on Bible School Radio 91.3.
This is Rob Randall, your host and teacher of the Invisible War radio program. The Invisible War is the study of God's Word on how to walk in Christ's victory in the spiritual battles we face against the powers of darkness. Join me every Sunday morning at 9 right here on KDKR and KYJC in Commerce, your station for life.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. I do appreciate it. Hey, I want to make sure to kind of drive home a little bit about the webinar coming up next Wednesday and next Friday. So the 26th and the 28th. I got to tell you that we've done lots of webinars, and I'm extremely excited about this particular webinar because it really, I think it kind of takes everything and puts it together. It talks about the 5 questions you need to be asking, what you need to know based on these 5 questions. It could save you retirement. It could save you a lot of grief when it comes to what's really happening. An understanding using facts, not using sensationalism, to give you really something to think about and something to consider. Some of this information I have not talked about in webinar form. A lot of it I haven't talked about in webinar form. And of course, I have not really talked a lot about it on the radio because it requires visual and it's just really tough. That's one of the big benefits about a webinar is that you got visual in front of you. We're going to talk about things about inflation, about bear markets, about what your options are, about what you can do to protect yourself from inflation. And then the one crown jewel of this webinar is cycles and history. Now, don't go, oh man, that's gonna bore me to death. This is it's very, very straightforward, and I think this is the key that separates people in retirement from making it and not making it. I totally believe in this. And it's something that's very simple to understand. So we'll be talking about it and how history plays a huge part in predicting what could potentially happen going forward. I got to tell you, it's not all bad news. There is some good news at the end of this. So we'll go sign up for it. I'm going to keep it about 40, 45 minutes max. And I'll do a better job of doing questions and answers. It's a little bit tough on a webinar, but we definitely, that's on my end. We need to do a better job of that so you can have your questions ready. Next Wednesday, October 26th at 12 noon, lunchtime, grab a little bit of lunch, join me on a webinar. Friday, the 28th, same thing, noon, okay? So we're going to have a lot of fun doing this, and I pray that you have some aha moments to where you go, oh, boy, that makes total sense. And that's my prayer, that's my objective, is for you to walk away with something that I didn't know about, that I didn't know this was the case. Now if I apply this to my decision making, I think I'll get better decisions with what God has given me to manage. And we're going to talk about a lot of things. So once again, you can go to prudentmoney.com, sign up for it, and I am so looking forward to doing this. So we're talking about what are the odds of it happening? You're watching Fox News, and they're talking about the economy. Well, hyperinflation, I would think, is about 15%. A recession, I think, is 100%. Because we're already in one, according to the definition of a recession that you've got financial media completely ignoring. I don't get it. I'm going to stop talking about it because I don't get it. I wonder what they're going to do if we come up with another negative quarter this month, because the third quarter will be announced this month. We'll see. My gut tells me that it's not going to be negative because you've got midterms coming up in a couple weeks. Well, we'll see. We'll see. The inflation report was a lot worse than I thought it would be, considering how close we are to midterms. Stagflation, where you have a recession, you have declining growth in the economy, and you have inflation. Once again, I think we're at 100%. Deflation, it's when prices are falling, interest rates are falling, I think is like 55, 60%, which would be good, way better than what we're dealing with today. So gotta have an odds of it happening and keeping it in perspective. So most of sensationalized writing is based on a very low probability event. And I'll give you a great example. And I'm going to only speak to half of the information that's floating around about the IRS and the 87,000 people who are going to be hired and the guns and the ammo and all that kind of thing. I mean, it's just everywhere. Had Dan Pill on the other day, and he's an authority on the IRS. And believe me, if he has an opportunity to say something that's true, that's sensationalized about the IRS, he does it. He said that it's 87,000 people over a 10-year period, and when you account for all the people who will be retiring and leaving in that 10 years, it puts us just about the same place as we are today. So much for the 87,000 immediate employees. He's going to talk about the rest of the rumors next month, so make sure that you dial in. So that, of course, anything about the IRS doing anything heavy-handed is going to grab the attention of anybody. Then another example is one, I mentioned this the other day with Mark Pfeiffer, one nightly Fox TV show that I watched the beginning of, just enough negativity to put me to sleep. I don't know why I watched this show. Anyway, she's talking about the stock market and talking about how bad the stock market is and how it's going to take investors years to make back their losses. Now, for someone, that's a pretty heavy soundbite. For someone who who casually understands what's going on with the stock market, casually understands their investments, and they got oh gosh, it's going to take me a year. I'm going to miss out on years. What if I lose any more? I mean, it just creates so much negative emotion that we add to the filter. Oh, I got to filter this decision through years of time it's going to take me to make back my losses. Ladies and gentlemen, at the worst, the drop in the S&P 500 has been 25%. The drop and crash in the stock market in 2020 due to COVID lasted a month and a half. I believe that it dropped down to 36%. And the market made it back in 3 or 4 months. Now, if this drops 55, 60%, yeah, it's going to be years. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. And by the way, according to, Yahoo and all these other news outlets, if the Dow Jones Industrial dropped 4% in a day, that's a crash. It's not a crash. It's just a bad day on the market. So the end result, we become misinformed, emotionally driven decision makers, which is not a really good foundation for decision making. And that's the name of the game when it comes to stewardship, decision making. I came across this verse in Psalms. I love it, and I think it's so applicable to today. Psalms 119, 160. Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long. There's nothing more powerful than lead me in your truth. So let me filter it through your eyes, God, and lead me and teach me, because you're the God of my life, my salvation, and I wait and I'm patient all the day long. So there's not, I think we get real impatient for that wisdom or that peace from God to make a decision, and we've got to remember it's all about waiting on His timing. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. I do appreciate it. Well, I just got through one segment. It's funny when I prep for radio programs, and I kind of jot down some thoughts and a little bit of an outline, so I know exactly what to go to. Today, I just never know how long it's going to take me to get through one segment. Well, I got through one segment, and I had 6 listed. I often have people ask me, how do you come up with material every day for a program? There's just tons of it, tons of things going on, things that we can talk about, share some opinions, and just look at it and see how we feel about it. Lots of opinions, and all I want to do is you're getting the financial media is pretty heavily sided going one direction most of the time when it comes to investments and things like that. So I want to give you the other side of the story, and once again, I always make sure and be very clear. Not saying I'm right, not saying they're wrong. Only time's going to tell you who's right or wrong. I was telling you the other side of the story so that you can look at both and make a decision on what you think makes the most sense and is in alignment with how you believe. So that's always been the objective of the program. So these other 5 items I will get to probably next week. Tony Joe's coming on the program tomorrow. Looking forward to that. Always love seeing him. And he'll be on the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. And if you have not done so, go sign up for the webinar. Next Wednesday, the 26th, or next Friday, the 28th. And it's at noon on both days, so you can grab some lunch, listen to it, watch the webinar. And I'm really excited about it because this is some information I've not talked about before. It's brand new. And it's good to put some concepts with some visuals. And my hope is that you have an experience that you walk away and go, I didn't know that. Now that I do, I'm going to process my decisions this way. So that's off the website, prudentmoney.com. Well, this is Bob Brooks. We are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time. Keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
When you read the